my song. Let's sing it. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Come on, it's gonna be fucking awesome. You know the words. It's gonna be fucking awesome. That's it, sing. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Yeah!
What's up, my friends? It's Jesse Blaze Snider, the Coolest Geek Alive. How are you doing, my fellow Coolest Geeks? Care Bear stare out to you all. I am here today to fucking bury Vince McMahon for any of you people who don't know yet. Like, what a piece of shit he is. I've had a bug up my ass about doing this. I haven't known exactly how to cover it. I started kind of like writing down details about some of the women, and then I was like, I don't even want to talk about it. It's so disgusting what he has done. And he's a disgusting man intellectually to the fans. He's always been. I want to tell you, this show and my show, All Your Favorite Bands Suck, I always consider a entry-level look into the heart of all of these fandoms, as realistic a depiction of the thing as I can give you. Now, I'm kind of a fair weather wrestling fan, but I know a lot of behind the scenes, especially, now terrible, dastardly behind the scenes. But I have a lot of friends who are big into wrestling. I was always casually into wrestling. I was into wrestling for a little while when I was a kid. I was big into The Ultimate Warrior and Hulk and Macho Man, and that was kind of my era. The connection between rock and roll and wrestling. My father, who was in the band Twisted Sister, and they were touring, he would run into the wrestlers on the road, so I would hear stories about that. I always found the wrestlers pretty interesting, but I found the matches to be boring. I felt like a lot of wrestling was just really boring, especially knowing that the outcomes were set up, which I now know in pro sports the outcomes are often largely set up. It's not to say that you can't watch a game that's played honestly for whatever reason, but it's crazy. Dig into any professional sport, and ultimately the money, the betting, all of these things become real factors. And there's so many little ways that these things can be controlled in ways that you just would never notice. I'm going to say that a lot on this episode. Of like, go dig into this, and I'll give you a couple people to follow and stuff. Like, if you want to just bird's eye view into some of the general feelings about Vince McMahon, there's a channel called Cafe de Rene with Rene Dupree, who I guess has a background as a wrestler, and he has all of these low to high level wrestlers coming on, and there's a compilation of them talking about Vince, and oh my God, he's such an aggravating person. Within the first 5 minutes of listening to one of those interviews, there was a thing of it doesn't matter what the fans like. And this is the stupid shit that the bosses at the top of fucking Marvel and DC and these are things that they say. And then when you hear these people say these things, you go, oh, this explains why so much of the stuff sucks. Because they're thinking it's not worth it. They're not viewing it the way we're viewing it. It can be really disillusioning coming up as a fan of any of these things, going into it as a professional, but really caring as a fan, because so many of the people who are in the business of comic books or wrestling or whatever it might be, they see it a whole different way. And as I said, with wrestling, I was into it. I bailed, but I would still watch the Royal Rumbles. I love the Royal Rumbles, and I have really good friends of mine. Shout out to TJ, shout out to Aaron Sparrow, who love wrestling and would generally watch. And in order to understand what they were, loving, I would always ask questions, and then I would watch documentaries and stuff behind the scenes on wrestling. So because the thing that really interested me about wrestling was the behind the scenes, the sort of drama, how the characters, like I was really interested in how it was being written. And ultimately, like a lot of the individuals are writing their own things. Wrestling is a very interesting world, especially the way the ideation, the way ideas and how these things come up, because there's a lot of sort of freewheeling that happens at these shows, and very simplistic communication goes over really great. Like there's a character that I love, Daniel Bryan, who very famously the audience was loving, but the fucking, Vince McMahon was holding him back because he had this idea about only these big men, really big macho men like Hulk Hogan, are the big stars, and that these littler guys who were built like Daniel Bryan or CM Punk, they were being really held back by Vince McMahon, with the audience, really booing him for it in all sorts of fashions. He's guilty of all the things that every producer at every Marvel film or whatever, like, who cares what the fans think? Let's do the cinematic version of this thing. Let's change it in this way because, and, who really knows that thing anyway? The strength of adapting any of these things is that there's a fan base that is interested. That fan base proves its worth. That fan base being satisfied to some degree proves its worth to the normies. You need us to give the thumbs up to the thing. If we disapprove, nobody wants to like the thing that the smarter fan disapproves of. And that's what we are. We're the smarter fan. We're the audience. In general, so much of Hollywood, they realized very quickly that they weren't as smart as we were. They didn't know what we knew, and they weren't willing to get that information the way we got it, by reading things and becoming in the know in geek culture and all of this science fiction classics and fantasy classics. And there's so much stuff to read to really get into it. So it's easier to just sort of go, fuck the fans. We don't have to please them. They're too difficult to please anyway. Moving on. We're too difficult to please anyway is really like generally the consensus, I feel, in Hollywood. And so often I think that's the thing with Vince McMahon, behind the scenes, from his perspective, he's learned that the audience doesn't even know what it wants. What are you going to do? And he's doing his Vince shit. But from this perspective of not being a big fan, but being a fan of a point of interest in like the background, I can tell you that my impression of Vince McMahon was that he was the worst when it came to fucking listening to the fans, because he was convinced that we didn't deserve a voice and we were inconsistent in what we were asking for and whatever other fucking stupid perspective he'd picked up over the years, but he was convinced that he was the only one who knew what to do. And you saw like there really wasn't much of a change. There was a change that happened at a certain point, but it came from the TNA wrestling's success, and that was run by Triple H and his daughter, and the amount of creepy and weird fucking stories out of this freaking company, and it's really like, it's so lame. I mean, he had proposed a story to his daughter where they were going to get married and have a baby. And she was like, no, absolutely. And then they switched up the story to make it her brother Shane. And she's like, I'm not acting this out. This is disgusting. But for Vince, this is all right. What up, coolest geeks alive? As we dive into the latest in geek culture, whether it's breaking down the newest superhero film, deep diving into TV's greatest universes, or exploring the epic source material behind your favorite shows, one thing's for sure, we need fuel to keep up with it all. Enter Factor Meals, your secret weapon for no prep, no mess meals that keep you going strong through every binge watch, deep dive, and fan theory you can think of. With Factor's chef-crafted meals, whether you're gaming, reading, or just catching up on the latest from Marvel or DC, you can hit your wellness goals without missing a beat. Choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or keto options to suit your geek lifestyle. These fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Perfect for when you're neck deep in the latest epic saga and don't want to hit pause. So make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine that fits right into your epic quest for geekdom. With 35 different meals and over 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon, all while you dive into the next big thing in geek culture. Plus, keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up, leaving you more time to geek out. Whether you're managing calories, maximizing protein, or just aiming for a well-balanced diet, Factor has 6 menu preferences to support your lifestyle. Head to factormeals.com/CGA50 and use code CGA, Coolest Geek Alive, 50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code CGA50 at factormeals.com/CGA50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. So stay sharp, stay fueled, and stay geeky with Factor Meals, because the coolest geeks alive deserve the best. And like, I really don't want to get like into too much fucking details with this stuff. I'm going to kind of skirt around these things. If you want to find out some real details, the fucking nitty gritty and plenty of dirty stuff, I'll recommend a channel that I personally was digging into. Let me find the channel. Blaze's Video Stash. He's on YouTube, and sorry, I got an ad wanted to play on my phone. I'm just trying to pull up his account, but he is a real fan who's been following this stuff for a long period of time. He has a lot of information. He's not the only one. So let me just say this. Let me back him up. There's a lot of people who are, if any one of his videos, you can type in that title and you'll see at least 2 or 3 other people having the same conversation. He's not saying things that are out of this world for what is possible. But so much verified information is here. Interviews, things straight from the horse's mouth of various wrestlers on Blaze's Video Stash, and then a ton of what is ultimately the basis for the theoretical conversation we're going to have about Vince McMahon and ultimately what I really think he's responsible for beyond some of these things that I can prove. Because I want people to understand what level of bad man he is. I'd really like to see him thrown in jail. I'd like investigations to take place. There's so much information here. If you just look at the information over time, I think we may find out that Vince McMahon could be a major serial killer who has been taking out wrestlers for a long time, and perhaps with links to secret societies making sacrifices of these gladiators, which just makes too much sense to me, unfortunately. I do a show now. I started this show every Friday called Everything They Don't Want You to Know. I didn't want to believe that things like the Illuminati and that stuff was real. I was invited to join them multiple times, invited to play their parties with my band, to play their party. It was so casual the way I was invited as well. It kind of blew my mind. Because I was refusing to believe that was really like a factor in this existence. And I'm here to tell you, it is so much. The only thing that matters in terms of getting a message out is media. Being able to get promotion of what you are, what you do. That is the only thing that matters. I'm an artist, and I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how great it is. Unless you put money into getting it out into the world, no one is ever going to find out about it. Granted, there are things like my friend works at the newspaper and thinks this is great, and they took a picture of it, and then there are ways to get media for free, but media, knowledge of what you are, what you're doing, what you're about, that is everything. And the people in power who have the money, they're the only ones who can afford to properly promote things and get things out and make ideologies and narratives about things. Vince McMahon is controlling every fucking biography that they're making on WWE superstars whose names they control. He's trying to control all these people's names and all these people's likenesses. Half the reason why I've got such a bug up my ass about doing this freaking show and shitting and lambasting fucking Vince McMahon is I watched the Macho Man Randy Savage biography for the WWE, and I felt like it was such a hit piece. Something that should have been a celebration of that man's life. Like half of it was them shitting on him so bad. And again, I don't want to fucking, like, there's so much of this Vince McMahon and the things that he does and like the provable things that he does and has done make him such a dastardly, I know I keep using the word shitty, and it's like metaphor for his nastiness and some of the nastiness that he's wrought that I'd rather not fucking talk about on the damn show, because he's just such a fucking gnarly dude. On so many levels. But this is an extra level that I wasn't even planning on mentioning. But when these people die, he controls the narrative of their life. He owns a certain portion of their likeness, and he's making money off of their action figures and their thing. And now that they're fucking gone, I'm sure it's easier for him to control how he releases the toys and all these other. Oh my God. Licensing and licensing control, it's the thing that you really want to learn about. I've been making wonderful friends with Digger Mensch, who's one of my teen idols. I'm 40-something, Digger's 55. But when I was a kid, Wizard magazine, I used to read cover to cover, and he had a great, he was very good about getting himself press and getting that advertising to get his company out there. And his company, Art Asylum, was the type of company that I wanted to make. It was just, everything was well-rounded and balanced. The logo was cool, and it was kind of, there was some branding. There was a character that they made, for that company that was like a harlequin. And I had been working with some harlequin concepts that were cool, like, using it in like a dark way. And he had that same idea. And then the packaging was beautiful, and the quality of the toys was amazing. And they were always like innovative and like really like ahead of their time in how well put together they were. It was an incredible company. Aaron just reminded me of something that they had done towards the end of their run, where they were doing these different alien interpretations of different aliens from Star Trek. And they were putting out some characters, not actual likenesses of the characters, but just like some interesting interpretations of the aliens. It's a great idea. It was like the end of the thing, and I got to ask Digger about why that didn't go, but I want to bring him in and talk to him about licensing, and just, so you guys can get some information, because he's done a lot of licensing, working in toys, and working around licensing and being creative about that, which there's so many interesting ways to do that. Sorry, I just hit my microphone. It'd be a really cool conversation to have. So I'm going to try to see if I can get him, because he and I have been like living together. I'm staying over at his house and helping him with a few things, and he and I have been working on basically bringing our companies together and just being partners and what we do, and adding him to the trifecta that is Aaron Sparrow and Digger Mensch and Jesse Blaze Snider. The three of us, I think, can really do exactly what we wanted. I had somebody else in Digger's position a while ago, but I was sort of just waiting to find the right person when the time was right. And, we were walking down the street and I went, "Do you want to be my art director?" And he said, "Anything you want." Yeah. So it's really cool. I mean, this guy's one of my heroes as a teenager. So I mean, I'm like living a dream. Not that I even like dared to dream that I would be hanging out with one of my idols, and and have him working with me for my company. And I think basically we're going to be able to reinvigorate his company, and that through his company, I'm going to be able to work on a bunch of toy things that I wanted to do. So yeah, really a lot of really cool stuff going on over here, and I want to bring Digger in maybe next week to talk about some licensing stuff, which I think will be a really, really cool episode to listen to, because he's got a lot of experience there. Anyway, dealing with these contracts and trademarks and all this shit, Vince McMahon has definitely been unscrupulous and fucked up and hiding money. And, one of the last interviews that I was watching was a relatively little-known wrestler who you wouldn't fucking know about, who I barely remember his name. I barely recognize his name. But he talked about suing Vince McMahon twice and winning twice for money that had been hidden from him, that he wasn't getting paid. And most of these companies are doing that for people who have royalties. My brother just sued iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio was hiding money from their podcast that they were doing, and he came back with real numbers, so that they can get paid for the shows that they got out there, and they made some money. I forget what the original name of the show was. But it was a plant medicine advocacy show about sort of psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, and these psychedelic plant medicines, and how helpful they've been to addicts and people with depression and so many different things. I've worked with these plants myself, and I'm an advocate as well for their when you can use them properly and not like they're drugs, like it's spiritual experiences, very, very positive experiences for people. So Cody had done a season of his show, and maybe the name of the show will pop into my head. I feel bad that I'm not remembering it. But it was the number one in its space, and it had really great ratings, and anchored a little bit by an episode with my father and my mother. And my father was notoriously straight edge, and by the end episode, they hook him up with a doctor and whatever else, and he does microdosing and has very positive benefits for taking those things for his health. So it's really been crazy seeing firsthand over the years various ways that licensing and trademark can be used. And when you hear stories about this, and I'm not going to talk about this in specifics for Vince because there's just so many fucking individual stories. And I've heard so many people say things in passing, various versions of, Vince had my name, so I couldn't use my name. Like, go fucking just listen to Hulk Hogan talk for a little while. And, and trying to, be who he is in the WWE, outside of the WWE at various points in time. And, there's all sorts of bits. So Vince sucks on that level. He sucks on a fan level. Beyond that, this guy, and I wrote down the numbers. There was a $3 million that he was paying. And I mean, this is basically what I will, kind of say here to not go into too much here. But it was a $3 million hush money scandal that he was paying out to some person. And again, the information about who these some peoples are and what he did to these some peoples. And, it ranges from them having some fucking awful experience, where they get raped and whatever else, and Vince is like, oh well, we got to cover this up. Come on, let's just sweep this under the rug. So, it would be bad for you. It'd be bad for them. It'd be bad for. Let's not let one. This is a quote from Vince McMahon. Let's not let one bad experience destroy the whole. There is. It's so gross. He's so gross. I don't want to get into details. So, and then in other instances, just the most disgusting, long-term grooming, pulling making people who are vulnerable, employees, making them his girlfriends under lots of false pretenses, perpetually changing the paradigm of their relationship, sharing them around at the company, offering them to superstars who are coming into the company as like a bonus. And bonus, you can get anything you want from Sasha, my personal sex assistant. That kind of shit. And really just gnarly. And then even shorter, sweeter bits with prostitutes and whatever, things where, I don't want to talk about it, but things where he is disgusting, doing disgusting things, treating human beings like they are not human beings. I have no fucking patience for this. I am a free speech advocate. I am not a fucking physical abuse advocate. I don't believe that women should be hitting men. I don't believe that men should be hitting women. I don't believe that anybody should be putting hands on anybody else unless they're on a fucking field of, athleticism. You know what I'm saying? So I think this shit is shenanigans. He is a monster. He's been doing it for fucking years and years and years and years. It's awful that these things have taken so long, to come out in detail. It's awful that so many details about this shit exists and that I only, was able to find out all this information recently. And it's like, as the really terrible, the most recent terrible thing and him having to resign or whatever, I went back to dig it because I wanted to know, what did this motherfucker really do? And it's terrible. It's terrible, guys. And, there is plenty of channels that you can go to find the frickin' skinny on I don't know what I'm fucking talking about. It's just, he is a fucking monster. And let me see. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Wizard Magazine. I don't know if this is what's going on here now. In the news, there's a very clear say that like Vince is out of the company and all these things. Granted, I want him arrested. Especially because at Wizard, I remember Gareb Sheamus had, he wasn't the head of the company anymore because like basically people didn't want him to be the head of the company anymore, so they got rid of him. But they didn't get rid of him. He was still there. And I wonder about Vince. He's a fucking monster. I wonder if he fucking figured out some way to still be there. So, Vince is guilty of his crimes against the geekdom of wrestling fans, people who were trying to direct the stories the way the fans would be most happy with, and like he was constantly fucking defying them every chance he got. The sex scandals, I said $3 million hush money. Okay. When they went to go investigate, they found out that $9.5 million in additional money had already been allotted to women who had signed, former employees, female employees who had signed non-disclosure agreements with with various forms of misconduct on behalf of Vince McMahon. One of the quotes was, "He gave her like a toy to John Laurinaitis." This shit really pisses me off. This is a man working in a business, having great success over decades and decades, who is treating people like they are slaves. Fuck this guy. I'm just getting to the fucking, like, this is like all the factual part. I'm just going to start fucking speculating and putting forth the idea, because he needs to be arrested. And I think it's got to be easy enough for some people to fucking really put together some stuff, long term, an investigation. What is going on here? Like, somebody do some Freakonomics math on this stuff and tell me if this makes any sense. Adding to the, well, what is the whole thing, this whole conversation about, really? Like, this is me painting a picture of what level of depravity this man's about. It's pretty clear and evident that he's been treating women like slaves. So he doesn't have much regard for human life on that level. So would you put it past a man like that to kill somebody if it suited him? I don't. And then you have a case like the Jimmy Snuka thing, where it seems pretty clear that Jimmy Snuka accidentally, probably, but he did something, killed a woman, and Vince McMahon helped him cover it up. It was his girlfriend at the time, Nancy Argentino, and it's 1983, and she's found injured, and she died of traumatic brain injuries, and the case remains unsolved. And McMahon was involved in that thing, and if you don't know, in 2015 he was charged, and basically the charges were dropped because he was too old to stand trial for it. But he was charged for her murder. They wanted to finally do it, but this has been the thing with Vince McMahon. He's covered in weirdness. I put down a couple quotes from him. He had said, "It was unfortunate he died." He was talking about like an uncle who had molested him. "It was unfortunate he died before I could kill him. I would have enjoyed that." He talked about in a Playboy magazine interview that he had like some sex experience in the woods, and for some reason he wanted to put crushed leaves in his girlfriend's vagina. He's a weirdo. And this is really what I want to get to. Something that I called 13 sacrifices. That was my plan. I was going to find 13. But instead, I ended up finding essentially 22 that I could write down. Now, 22, and this isn't even including a lot of characters that I thought about putting on it that I would have had to have looked up. I was about to look up those characters, and then all of a sudden my list got so long. So I just pulled up all of these ones. I mean, the amount of wrestlers who have died young, like there's a list of 100 dead wrestlers that you can find on YouTube that I didn't even get through the whole thing the other day because I'm like, well, like some of these don't ultimately like matter. But it's crazy how many are linked to the WWE because of the nature of these, the incestuous nature of these promotions as he slowly took over all of this stuff. And how many have terrible relationships with the WWE, and how many people like have to make nice with the WWE in order to have a career because it's so powerful, and how many stories you can hear like that. I'm going to just kind of, it's easy to blame these, these deaths on, oh, well, they were doing some sort of drug. Lots of people are doing some sort of drug in their life. Or they had mental health issues. Lots of people have mental health issues, or whatever the thing. And it's easy to say these things. It's very easy to like make up these stories about people, say Chris Benoit murdered his wife and kid because he's a crazy person. And then it becomes like, oh, to even like think about talking about, wait a second, maybe that doesn't make any sense. Maybe that's rather strange. Maybe there's a whole bunch of incongruent pieces of information that don't exactly line up with that when you really look into some of these things. And again, I'm not going to go here and I'm not going to be the one who's going to sit and break down all this stuff and tell you why it's fugazi. I want you to do it. I want you to notice that it's fucking fugazi that this many people died. This many people died so young. This many people died so young with freaking Vince McMahon benefiting from their death often in various ways. Whether it's, and also having lots of fucking motive and bad blood with so many of these people and so many shitty situations. There's just so much to dig into. Like for me to have written down all of the various investigators who did, like it's better for you to go hear it from these people. And there's so many. So go to these people who are real crazy wrestling fans. Not me, that I am like listening to so many of them. They're all saying the same shit. And let's go through some of these deaths that are, interesting. You got 22 for me here. You got a dude who I didn't really know much about this guy, but his name is Lance Cade. He was born in 81, died 2010, 29 years old, heart failure, exacerbated by substance abuse. He's young, and for me, that's suspicious. Cade had been released from WWE prior to his death due to wellness policy violations. No major public disputes with McMahon, but struggled with life post WWE. I don't know. Are they setting these guys up for falls and sacrificing these gladiators? I don't know. It seems kind of crazy to me that these men are dying so young. This man is a terrible man. And, when you see other bits that are way more obvious, you start to wonder so many things. And I just want some people to really wonder. I want people to look at all this information and wonder. 21, Mike Awesome, 1965 to 2007. He died 42 years old in an apparent suicide by hanging. This was a shock to his friends and family. They did not expect this. And of course, it comes back to this thing of like highlighting the mental health struggles faced by wrestlers after leaving the spotlight, people who don't say anything about the fact that they're thinking about committing suicide and stuff. I don't really buy that. Most of us do. And if they didn't say anything, I think that's suspicious. I think maybe somebody killed them. I think most people don't really want to die. Most people are, I've dealt with feelings of suicidalness. I never really wanted to die. And I've told the people that I've told that I was feeling suicidal that I didn't really want to die. I don't really want to die, but I feel bad. Like I feel like in my experience that I felt that I just didn't want to be here, and that I didn't feel like I was being helpful in the ways that I wanted to be, and it seemed like sort of like a lost cause or something, and I felt like I just would rather be done with it, but. I told someone because I didn't want to feel that way. I love my friends and my family, and I don't want to leave. And most people, they tell somebody something. And I'm not saying that every fucking one, and sometimes this happens and people don't tell. But if you don't tell anybody anything, that's strange to me. It's pretty strange. And there's a lot of these suicides that have been very strange. There's tons of strange ones in the fucking music industry. And, this was a weird one for, the people close to him. Of course, Awesome had a brief stint in the WWE, but he didn't publicly discuss McMahon. But that doesn't mean anything. You got Sean O'Hare, died at 43, apparent suicide by hanging. He, struggled with depression and substance abuse, leading to his tragic death, they say. I don't know. Is that true? He's just another one of those guys who struggle with life after wrestling. But you got Test at number 19. Andrew Martin, he died 33. And overdose of Oxycontin. This was like a death where the promotion bringing attention to the issue of drug use and the toll wrestlers take on young performers. It's like so easy to say these things. Oh, drug use and these wrestlers. It's like you could say anything about any wrestler and people would believe it. Oh, well, he's a wrestler, right? I mean, come on, just think about that. You really would. You'd be like, oh, he's a wrestler. But Test was critical of WWE after he left. And specifically regarding the lack of long-term care for wrestlers. So, would that piss off Vince? I think it would. If to go listen to what sort of petty fucking piece of shit Vince is. Like seriously, if you want to know, just take my word for it. He's the worst. Because I've spent so many hours, right, and I wasn't making notes from the beginning of everything. So, I've gathered the things that I thought were important to sort of just get the gist of really what I want to talk about, which is all these fucking wrestlers dying all the time. I really would love some people to reinvestigate this shit because I smell something. So it doesn't matter. It's probably not all of them. I hope not. I really do. But there's so much more beyond the ones that I'm even reading. I got 18 more to read, and there's so many more that are just the same level of like, okay, that could be too. He could be too. People dying before their time, and even people dying a little later on or whatever. But after all sorts of fucking fugazi situations with Vince McMahon, you got Doink the Clown. He died at 55 from an accidental drug overdose. He struggled with substance abuse through his life, a common issue among wrestlers. They want to tell you. Because how convenient is it? All these people dying. And Doink the Clown, he had a bad relationship with the WWE. A lot of things to say against the company afterwards. And Vince does not like when people are fucking shit talking him. 17, you got Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Jim dies 63 after a fall in his home, which led to complications. He had a fall in his home that killed him at 63. Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And then, it's like he's a fall in his home, and like they made it about him having a history of like substance abuse. But he has this accidental death, but it's like, remember, he was also a drug addict. So that's why he's capable of hurting himself in this way and dying from a fall in his home. Jim didn't really have like a lot of like outspoken problems with anybody, but people associated with Bret the Hitman Hart and people associated with other wrestlers that Vince doesn't like that's definitely a thing. And you'll see, Chris Benoit's best friend, he doesn't last very long on planet Earth. And there's a lot of weirdness with Chris Benoit. And I'm sorry if you're triggered by that Chris Benoit thing. It really broke my heart when I heard what had happened there. I knew my friend was a really big fan of Chris Benoit. A lot of people really like Chris Benoit. And, what they said he had done. But then I recently other information has been brought to my attention that makes me wonder if perhaps it wasn't true. It was so shocking because of the things that we felt like we saw in Chris Benoit as a man. And that man that we saw in that wrestling ring was not capable of these things. And, and still to this day, I think, that's the consensus that, he was responsible for the death of his family. I think something much worse happened. And that's one of the biggest ones that I want, I want something done. I want people to find something. You got another friend of the Bret the Hitman Hart, Davey Boy Smith, number 16 on my list here. Died at 39 from a heart attack, exacerbated by drug use, they say. You're going to see a lot of heart attacks on this list as we get towards the top. They say that his death was caused by steroids and painkiller abuse. And just another harsh death in the life of these whatever. Heart attack guns are real things. CIA, undercover agencies of all variety have had that sort of technology. A gun that can literally just stop somebody's heart. And other means of stopping people's hearts, fucking up people's hearts, giving people heart attacks. Heart attack, I consider a suspicious death when you enter in all this money and all this power into these equations. And Davey Boy Smith had a rocky relationship with WWE. And I think at the time, and like I said, the Bret Hart has lost a lot of fucking friends to this business. And I think it's more than just the friggin' health concerns involving fucking steroids and shit. I think McMahon has been off the fucking chain. If this guy is thinking that he is allowed to treat many, many women like slaves and prostitutes like slaves, all these people treat them as beneath him and ignore the fans, all the things that he's shown that he does not have a typical human heart and mind working, and all of these deaths, I something is rotten here, guys. And if you're out there and you're like, wow, this is interesting, I want to dig into this. If this is true, this guy deserves to go down. And I'm a lawyer. Like, yes, fucking do it. Please, somebody do it. 15 on my list, you got the Big Boss Man. Died at 41 years old from a heart attack again. You know, they just want to tell you it's high incident of heart problems with these wrestlers. You know, there's a lot of physical demands for their profession. But, you know, meanwhile, Big Boss Man, he wasn't known to be a drug addict in any way, shape, or form. But he's having, you know, well, he's a Big Boss Man, you know, heart attack. I don't know. And, you know, Big Boss Man had like a good relationship with the WWE. But it's just, there's so fucking many of them, man. I don't get it. I don't get why there's so many. And a lot of them are much grosser. Then you got 14, Road Warrior Animal. Died at 60 from natural causes, they say, which was cardiovascular disease. So another heart attack. And, you know, Animal had criticized McMahon a bit. Hawk was more critical of the WWE. He died at 46 from a heart attack. You know, they said Animal's heart attack in a weird way. But I mean, you know, this was attributed for him to drugs and physical toll of resin. I mean, all these people, it's the same thing. At 12, I got Sherri Martel. She died 49 from overdose of multiple drugs. It's like suspicious death to me. You know, it's like, it's really like, at this stage of the game, if you're young and you're in the business, and I mean like young of like you're still working in the business, you know, on any level, like, and you're dead, and there's money about your name and about the things that you've done because you're a musician or you're a writer or you're a wrestler or whatever it might be, I consider that grounds for fucking suspicion. Absolutely. And especially over time with this huge amount, like, again, this is 22 and there's a lot more that I could pull. There's a list of 100 and tons of them, you know, have some of these basic qualifications. Heart attack, you know, died really young, criticized Vince McMahon, criticized WWE, was suing WWE, things like that. Rick Rude. And granted, I used to think it was just because everybody's suing the WWE. Everybody's got problems with Vince McMahon. He's a shitty businessman. But it's like, he's way more than a shitty businessman. He's a vindictive man. He's got fucking lawsuits with all sorts of fucking people all out in the world. And lots of these people end up fucking dead. Isn't that weird? It's just crazy to me. Sherri Martel. You know, they're trying to, you know, again, like, she's a wrestler, she's facing drug addiction, but like, you know, I mean, she's somebody who was like ruined by wrestling. Like, any number of these people could be like going, Vince, I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna write a tell-all book if you don't give me money, and they could be paying these people, they could be getting paid off. You know, Sherri Martel could have got paid off until her fucking death, and then they killed her because we don't want to pay her off anymore. You know, or they drop one of these guys from their contract because like he's seen too much, and then they're threatening people or whatever else. I would not put anything past Vince McMahon. When you read the details of the shit that he pulled with these women, the things that he told them to keep them under control, and I mean, it is awful, awful. You know, to some degree, it's like, you know, please, like, you know, don't take my word for it. If you don't believe me, go dig into it. If you can believe me, just trust me. He's a shitbag, this motherfucker, and we can only hope that he gets thrown in jail, and tied to some of these deaths that I think he is so obviously attached to. Rick Rude, number 11. Rick Rude dies at 40 from heart failure, due to an overdose of mixed medications, they say. And again, the same, fucking things that they blame it on all these drugs. Oh, he was a wrestler and whatnot. And Rick Rude was pretty famously like, I don't know if he was straight edge per se, but like he was pretty clean living. I don't think he did steroids and stuff. That was his natural physique, and he had a really great body. But maybe he did later in his career and stuff. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't remember it. Rude was preparing he left on bad terms with the WWE. But he didn't publicly speak out against Vince. But he was reportedly preparing for a comeback at the time of his death. But who knows? That could just be fucking PR that freaking Vince McMahon say, oh yeah, we were working things out. And I'm like, freaking, I haven't watched any behind the scenes on Rick Rude. I used to like Rick Rude though. 10, Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig. Curt Hennig died 44. Acute cocaine intoxication, drug overdose. He was somebody who was like a supporter of Vince McMahon's, but he was also somebody who was like famously tied to a really crazy plane ride from hell that had happened. There was fights on the plane. There was a lot of shit that went down. I mean, the bad behavior going on behind the scenes here is crazy, and enough that I don't put it past them just killing people to cover up this thing or that thing or whatever else, especially if Vince McMahon decides whatever else. And especially if perhaps there's this deeper link, like there seems to be. There's something called gematria, which is basically breaking down dates of things, looking for connections to sort of esoteric solstices and solar eclipses and things that might be interesting to people who were into the concept of dark magic. And there are some interesting breakdowns of, especially like Owen Hart's death, and we're going to get to that one in a second, that suggest that there's some weird, creepy, dark magic at play with some of the timings and choices of these deaths. This is something that I would like to see investigators investigate into. I'd like to see the full fucking 100 of every freaking wrestler who's died. I'd like to see every single one of their deaths lined up with a freaking chart with all of these things that might show up in freaking gematria. I'd like to see former employees, anybody who had possibly died, who has ever worked with the thing, anybody linked to the WWE in any way, shape, or form, who has died, and gematria, all this fucking shit, all these things, all these dates. This is what I want to see. I want somebody to do this deeply. There's just too many fucking wonderful people that I care about, that are interesting characters in our history who are gone way before their time, and I am suspicious. I am fucking suspicious of all of them, until Vince is investigated. I'm suspicious of every single one of them until Vince is investigated. Okay? Number 9, Razor Ramon. Scott Hall. He died 63. Complications following a hip surgery, including a series of heart attacks. So he has hip surgery, and then he has a series of heart attacks. Or did they kill him with a fucking heart attack gun? And motherfucker was so tough, they had to try it multiple times. That's some crazy shit. And they want to try to blame this on his history of substance abuse issues or whatever. And I don't know how serious is his history of substance abuse issues. Most people in this world are doing, are drinking some certain amount of alcohol. Are these people drinking alcohol and then retroactively they're like, well, he's had substance abuse issues. He's always been a drinker. I drink. I've never had substance abuse issues with my alcohol. I've smoked a little bit more marijuana than I would like to at some times because it was like my anxiety and pain medicine. There people could easily just say that was true. Certainly I've never smoked enough that I would be threatening my life. And, this could just be, Jesse smoked marijuana and sometimes he took magic mushrooms. That shouldn't kill me. But so easy to fucking say these kind of things. This is insane. Just all these people, a series of heart attacks. And, okay, maybe he did have a series of heart attacks from this hip surgery. But if you're having a series of heart attacks from hip surgery, I'm suspicious about that. Something weird's going on. And yeah, maybe it was because he's been doing so many drugs. And okay, but it's really convenient on this list of 22 people, and I haven't even finished yet. And and Scott, he famously had a complicated relationship with WWE and Vince McMahon. Even though he said positive things about Vince McMahon as well, as most of these people have, because they're working to fucking, find a middle ground with a monster. He had said, the WWE saved his life, more than once. And I'm sure it had. But that doesn't mean that Vince isn't a piece of shit and that he didn't ultimately kill this guy when he wanted a sacrifice or he became inconvenient or he wanted to own the rights to his name or he wanted to fucking get him out of the way or whatever. I don't know. I'm just speculating here about the possibilities that I see lurking in Mr. fucking Vince McMahon's dirty mind. Number 8, we've got Eddie Guerrero. Eddie died of acute heart failure at the age of 38. Attributed to his history of substance abuse, of course. I think plenty of people have been fucking suspicious about Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was best friend to Chris Benoit. Sorry, I'm reading my notes. At number 7, I've got Chris Benoit. He died double murder-suicide. He killed his wife and son before hanging himself. And everybody felt like this was shocking because it just really did not. It shocked the world. There was this at the time. There was a big scrutiny to the WWE's wellness policies and all this stuff. Everything ends up getting, we shouldn't be taking so much steroids. Oh man, we really gotta be aware of drug use. A lot of these wrestlers are taking drugs to toll, and Benoit, he has severe brain damage, and look at the brain damage that he had, and look, he drew the thing. There are other details in this case. I'm not going to be the person to lay them all out because I'll get them wrong, and I didn't watch a refresher on Chris Benoit's whole case to give you all the information. But there's a bunch of different channels, and I watched a bunch of different people laying out the information that's available, and there is plenty of room for suspicion on that matter, a lot. Same with Eddie Guerrero. Chyna is a weird one. Number 6, Joni Laurer. Died of an accidental drug overdose at 46. Again, these drug overdose things, sorry guys, very, very easy to fake that. She had expressed feeling portrayed by Vince McMahon. She had a sex tape and there was a whole bunch of different things. She'd been left out of the Hall of Fame because of her past. But she was really a big deal for WWE, but sort of like inconvenient in some ways because she was alive. And I think Vince McMahon wanted to control her name or anything, or he could have. I don't know. I don't fucking know why this motherfucker might have done, but I just do think that these are some suspicious fucking people. So many people dying so young. It's just so suspicious to me. And I know it's just all of a sudden it's it's wrestlers. These wrestlers die easy. Wouldn't that be a fucking convenient freaking argument that Vince McMahon made a thing? So many of them. Fuck. Owen Hart, number 5. Tragically died during a WWE event after falling from the rafters due to a malfunction in his harness equipment. There's a whole bunch of fugazi things about him going from the rafters. He didn't want to do it. A ton of things. There's a ton of stories, ton of stuff that you can find. Go look into that one. The date, there's a gematria breakdown on that Blaze channel that I told you about earlier. Shit's crazy. Shit's fugazi. It's so stupid. It's like this raised questions about the WWE's safety protocols, but like this man, Martha Hart sued WWE, and the case was settled out of court. As is the case, Vince McMahon just fucking settles things out of court. When you're a big company, you just settle things out of court. You make it look like it's something that was legal, and then you settle things out of court. And this is of course the brother of Bret Hart. And like I said, there's more. There's even more people that aren't on this 22, like that are deeper, other wrestlers who are dead now as well, that I think that's weird too. That's weird that he died too. And it just always is the thing. It's like, oh, well, they did drugs and they did steroids or whatever, and they worked hard on their body, and now they lost it. They've committed suicide, or they've overdosed on the drugs. And I'm sorry, it's just not enough for me. Number 4 here, you got Bray Wyatt. Died at 36 due to a heart attack, exacerbated by complications from COVID-19, allegedly. Fucking Bray Wyatt, man. He's a young dude. Young dude, 36 years old. Gone now. No signs of foul play other than heart attack. And this heart attack thing is going around in the WWE, as you will continue to see as we finish things off with number 3 and number 2 and number 1. Bray Wyatt was there for a long time, and he definitely, he kept having to change his gimmick. He was clearly very frustrated creatively with them. He was getting screwed by Vince in so many ways. He had this great gimmick, and they never let him win any matches. It's just like so stupid. Number 3, The Ultimate Warrior, died, heart attack, age 54, just days after being inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame and making his first WWE appearance in years. The timing of his death was fucking nuts. As far as Ultimate Warrior was concerned, Vince was a fucking sick man. And he was right. Ultimate Warrior has been the most vocal against Vince, most vitriolic, explaining things, and has talked at length about really what he's like a straight edge kind of guy. He's I think maybe he was doing steroids or whatever else like a lot of these people were, but he considered himself an athlete, and he was very diligent about every aspect of that thing. I don't think that's a good fucking bit to say, oh well, he was like he really seemed to be somebody who was of sound mind, who took care of himself physically through his whole life and to the very end. And the things that he says about Vince, are just fucking just Vince, dig in, man, or take my word for it, because I'm not repeating all of his fucking heinous sins. Ugh. Just thinking about him. Every time I think about him, I got to think about the shit that I know he did, and I don't want to put it in your brains. But if you want it, go forth and investigate. So the last 2 we're going to talk about. Randy Savage died in a car accident after suffering a heart attack while driving. He was 58. He'd been blacklisted from the WWE for many years. And had a big falling out with McMahon. The biography show that I just watched of his recently is just a fucking total hit piece. And I've watched McMahon do that to other wrestlers in the past before. And scrub them from the record and other things, blacklist them because they're so bad, and separation. This is the behavior of somebody who is truly deprived, because he doesn't want anybody to know that he's deprived. Oh, look at this deprived person and this deprived person. Fucking Randy Savage was the man, and shit's terrible. And then Roddy Piper, who I think his dealings with Vince and terribleness go back all the way to the Ring Boy scandal, where there was basically these young kids who were freaking these ring boys, and there was scandals with them freaking having sex with these freaking little boys years ago. Go look into the freaking Ring Boy scandal. And Roddy Piper was he was a ring boy. And the long relationship and everything, there's all sorts of weird things with Roddy Piper, and him being involved in that movie They Live, which is very much like a fucking tell-all of the weird, corrupt world that we're living in, where with all these fake representatives trying to guide us towards being more like them, when you don't want to be more like any of these evil people. Piper died in his sleep of a heart attack at the age of 61. He had a history of hypertension. But he'd spoken publicly about his strained relationship with the WWE and McMahon, and that WWE wasn't taking care of its older talent. It sounds like somebody you want to shut up, right, McMahon? One of the quotes that I'd read, Davey Piper, they keep all the money and they don't care what happens to the talent. And that is just such a great place to end it. That's the truth. They don't give a shit. Vince McMahon doesn't give a shit about what happens to the talent. He doesn't give a shit what happens to these women. He's using everybody until they're of no use to him anymore. And then he gets rid of them. Is he getting rid of these people on a deeper level? Is he having anything to do with the deaths of some of these people? Plenty of the people who have filed lawsuits against him for sexual harassment and stuff are also no longer with us. There is a line of bodies, and I am suspicious. I really would like to see an investigation take place. If you're out there and you have something to do with law enforcement and you're seeing the laundry list of crimes and all the things that I spoke about briefly at the beginning of this thing, there are hours worth of, there's 3 hours of one of the victims' fucking stories that you can hear, and 2 hours of one of the other victims' stories that you can hear, and then a couple of the victims, you can hear their stories relatively quick. 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it is. But there is a ton of stories. And there's, what did I say, $9.3 million additional money that had been paid out in hush money to shut various ex-employees out. He's done doing that. But I think the time has come to start really scrutinizing all of these deaths in the WWE, especially for the man Bret the Hitman Hart, who has been screwed over by Vince McMahon in many ways. And I am very, very upset to begin to suspect it's much deeper, the horribleness that he has done to Bret Hart. Those murders, the Davey Boy Smith, Owen Hart, and more of his family members and family members through marriage, the Anvil Neidhart, and some of his other friends that have been part of his collection of wrestling people. I think the Dynamite Kid is one of them. These are some suspicious deaths, man. Just in the scope of everything else, I question. And I think Bret the Hitman is too noble to think that anybody would do something so dastardly as that. Or maybe he knows, and maybe he's got to be quiet because he's hurt a lot of his friends and he doesn't want anybody else to be hurt. And it almost seems like a hitman's alive so he can see his world pulled down around him. Brothers, friends, killed by the hidden hand of the wrestling business. This is, of course, all my speculation, but it's some informed speculation. And there is so much obvious evidence to support the idea that Vince McMahon does not think much of human life. If you're out there and you're hearing this, and there's anything that you can do to open the fucking case and start looking into some of these murders, it's really crazy. It's really crazy that this many people can die under this man's watch. And I think that if they're all tied together, that's the only way that he's going to maybe ever get in trouble for this. The only way to prove all of these long-standing things would somehow be the nature in which they are tied together. And I don't know. I haven't been investigating them. But there is all sorts of individuals investigating every individual case. And I think if you start looking at them all as a whole, I think that somebody, some smart person somewhere, could figure out how to prove what's been going on here, because something is rotten. And yeah, oh, my babies are trying to call me. Anyway, that's it for another awesome episode of The Coolest Geek Alive. Please join me this Saturday for a feature. I don't know who the fuck I'm featuring, what movie or what show, but it's going to be awesome. And I love you. Join me again next Wednesday as we talk about something else major and important on another amazing episode of The Coolest Geek Alive. I love you. I got to talk to my son. I'll talk to you later. Peace. Bye-bye. You've been listening to Coolest Geek Alive with me, your host, Jesse Blaze Snider. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more excellent geek culture content. Thanks for listening.
It's my favorite part! Isn't that heavy? I'll play that! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Coolest alive! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Stay with your tribe! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Revenge of the Geeks! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Week after weeks! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Laughing with you! It's gonna be fucking awesome! And crying sometimes too! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Spelling it out! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Making you shout! I'm a genius! I got lyrics coming out me bum for days! You like that? It's a kazoo solo! I played that too! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Talking some shit! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Living your shit! My voice is fucking awesome! Food in our mouth! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Get in the mouth! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Tell all your friends! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Call right or text! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Raising the bar! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Straight to the stars! It's gonna be fucking awesome! It's starting soon! Straight to the top of the awesome! Passing the moon! It's gonna be fucking awesome! On with the show! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Ready, set, go! It's going to be fucking awesome! Fucking awesome! It's gonna be fucking awesome! Just wait! You'll see! You'll all see!
The podcast playground. All right.